Times when there were gas lights on the corner lit by a lamp.
December 28th, 1982. This is Joe Todd, interview with Mrs. Lena Draughon.
Arms of the earth anyway, and so that was his name, Earthworm.
Mrs. Draughon, when were you born?
1879.
And when's your birthday?
Christmas Day.
Christmas Day.
Uh-huh.
Where were you born?
In Whitesboro, Texas.
Whitesboro, Texas?
I know where that is. I used to go to graduate school in Dallas, and I drive right
Who is your father?
Julius Earthworm.
And where was he from?
I'm not quite sure. I think from Germany, though.
Germany. He was born 1820.
Mm-hmm. And who was your mother?
My mother was named Napier. Napier. She was from, forebears were from France, but she was Scotch-Irish French.
Yeah, what was her first name?
Melinda Marguerite. Melinda.
How long did you live in Whitesboro?
Let's see. I don't know that.
Well, the first time you came to Davis, you were how old?
Just past 15.
No, the first time.
Oh, about 10 years old.
About 10. So
That was a visit, though.
Then if you came for the second time to Davis, you must have lived there 15 years. The first 15.
What did Davis look like first time you were there?
The first time I visited there.
Yeah.
Didn't look like much. There's my brothers had a store on the west side of the railroad track, and it faced south. And they had a house right behind that store.
What was the name of the store?
I guess it was always Earthworm Brothers, because the brothers were always together.
When did they come to Davis? Do you know?
They lived in, I think, out in the country from Dexter before that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know right where Dexter was either.
Was your father a store owner also?
Mm-hmm. Oh, he was, he brought a lot, when he came over to America, he brought a lot of silks and satins and furs over with him. And he had a store in New York.
Then he moved from New York to Whitesboro? Did he move from New York to Whitesboro?
No, he moved from New York to St. Louis, and from St. Louis to Mississippi, and from Mississippi back to Alton. I
think it's Illinois.
I forgot where Alton is.
It's right across the river from St. Louis, Missouri. Yeah. I think it must be Alton, Illinois.
Yeah, around East St. Louis. Yeah. So you moved to Davis when you were 15 years old?
Yes, I just passed 15.
About 1894.
Mm-hmm.
The first time was 1889 when she came.
Mm-hmm.
That was a visit.
And then if she was 15 when she came the second time, she was 10.
1894, yeah. Was 15 years old, yeah. How come you moved to Davis?
Because my brothers had a store there, and they wanted Mama to come up from Fort Worth. We lived in Fort Worth at that time, and they wanted her to come up there and live because all the brothers wanted to be together, half-brothers. Now, they were half-brothers. Two of them half-brothers and two of them brothers.
Have any sisters?
Let's see, now, Mama was married twice, and Papa was married twice. And, let's see. My first two sisters died of measles, No, my brother and sister, before I was born, died of measles. And then I didn't have any sister. I had a half sister, but no sisters. And I had 2 old brothers.
The half sister died though. She didn't come to Davis.
My half sister died in Fort Worth when she was 20. And I was 3 when she was 20.
Mm-hmm.
She's buried in Fort Worth.
What kind of house did you live in Davis?
In Davis?
Yeah.
Well, when we first came up there, we lived with my half-brother. And I don't know exactly how many rooms were there, but I know they had what they called a breezeway. Marion said it was called something else, but they called it a breezeway. That is between the main house. Then there was a big open porch with the steps on each side, and they called that a breezeway.
Was it called a dog trot?
That's what Marion calls it, but they didn't call it that. They called it a breezeway.
Mm-hmm.
And the wind would just blow through there like everything. I remember sitting out there at one time, and there came a real hard wind, and I thought it was going to blow me away, and I jumped up and ran in the house, and it blew that chair clear out in the yard.
Did you go to school in Texas?
Yeah.
In Whitesboro?
No, Fort Worth.
Fort Worth. Which school did you attend?
The first one I attended was called the Weatherford Grammar School, Weatherford School, and it went to the 6th grade, I believe.
Did you go to school in Davis?
Well, wait a minute. She
I'm
then
sorry.
went to
No.
private school from then on to when she came to Davis.
Mm-hmm. What was the name of the private school?
Miss Watson's private school for young ladies.
What did you study there?
I studied a little of everything. She had other teachers come in and teach some Latin and some what they call calisthenics and different subjects. She taught arithmetic, or mathematics, she called it, and no algebra. I remember my first algebra problem. She thought I was smart enough to know about algebra. She said, I'm going to put something up on the board and you work it out. And she said, but X plus Y. I thought I never heard of anything so silly in all my life. It's X plus Y.
What did you study? Did you take your piano lessons? Did the piano teacher come to the school, or did you go to her house?
Well, the first one I went to her house, but after that I always had a private teacher.
Mm-hmm. What was your favorite subject?
In school,
Mm-hmm.
I think arithmetic, as they called it. And spelling, I was crazy about spelling.
Now, was Miss Watson's boarding school?
No.
Okay, it was just a private school then.
Just a private school.
What kind of chores did you have as a little girl?
I don't remember Mama making me do anything.
Well, didn't you go to the store for her?
I went to the store and I dusted, but I didn't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm. How come?
I don't know.
Lucky.
As soon as I began to take piano lessons, I used to want to wash dishes. I like to wash dishes. And she said, no, you go practice. That was all I heard practically all my life, go practice.
Who did the laundry at your house?
Oh, we had a black woman to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or a Mexican woman.
How long did you live in Davis?
I don't know that.
Well, you left about 1921, didn't you?
You mean when we first moved to Norman?
No, you moved to Ardmore first.
I don't remember any of those dates, honey. I just don't remember.
Well, you moved to Ardmore, and then you moved from there to
Tishomingo?
Tishomingo,
Tishomingo back to Norman,
back to Davis.
back to Davis.
And then from Tishomingo to Davis, where you taught school.
Oh, yeah.
You taught public school music.
Yeah.
And then you moved to Norman.
When you moved to Davis in 1894, what did the town look like then?
Let's see. It was on the main street. There was the first thing I remember. It was a restaurant, and then there was a little hotel, and across the street from that was a dry goods store, and then a little drugstore, and then something else. I've forgotten what. I think that was a little restaurant or something, and then a drugstore, Frames Drugstore, and then a big building on the end of that block was a dry goods store.
What was the name of it?
Well, the dry goods store was named Freeman Brothers. And across the street from the Freeman Brothers was a bank, and it was called the Ellis Bank. And then next to the Ellis Bank, I think there was a grocery store. That was Satterfield's.
Oh, Mother?
No.
Oh, you're just going down the south side of the street now in your mind, aren't
No,
you?
I'm going down the east side of the street. The south side of the east,
Yeah.
going east.
I was thinking when you said Satterfield's, I thought, well, where's your husband's store? But your mind is going down the south side of the street.
South side of the street.
Okay.
On the other side of the street was my brother's general store. And it was a divided store. There was on the corner of that block was the dry goods and shoe department. And then there was I've often wondered how that thing was divided, because here was this part of the store, and it was together here, but in here, in the back part of it, there was an alleyway, and nothing in there at all. And then the rest of the store over there was where they kept the molasses and the kerosene and things like that. But the front part was the grocery part. So it was in the archway. There was on this side, on the east side, was the dry goods and shoes, and on the left side was groceries.
I thought that perhaps it was two buildings put together.
It must
They
have
were
been.
framed,
It must have been, but
when
they
she
were
told
not.
me about it. Mm-hmm. And then also, there was something very city-like. You remember you said before you married that there was a balcony?
Yeah, they built that
And
balcony
then
in
there
there.
was
I was cashier.
there was a basket that took the money up to the balcony where she was cashier.
The wires came up, and then it would come up to my place, and I would make change and send it back.
You were the cashier then.
Uh-huh.
Was this your husband's store?
No, my brother's.
Your brother's store. Okay. What was the population of Davis at that time?
Oh, my goodness, I don't know. Not very many, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a trading center.
Mm.
Because it was a trading center, Mother.
Yeah.
Because you remember that Mother Murray said they used to come from Tishomingo.
Oh, they came from all
in
around.
a wagon, and they would take a week
Yeah.
and go and trade at the Erdwer Brothers store, because, see, that was on the railway in Davis.
Yeah, they came from
And
Roth.
then they would go back to Tishomingo.
And,
You ever go to old Fort Arbuckle?
yeah.
What was that like?
Well, when I went to see it, it was nothing, really. Just remains of it. See,
But the chimneys were still up because when you and I went back there in the 50s, the 2 chimneys were still up.
mm-hmm.
But the roof was not on it.
No, it was in shambles.
Now, that's in the Arbuckle Mountains, isn't it?
Was it?
No, it's at the foothills. It's on the flat part. It was built around Wild Horse Creek. It really still looks real wild out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ranch, the Grant Ranch, there now, and they used some of the stones that had fallen down for the foundation of some of their buildings.
Hmm.
But it's really not in the Arbuckles. It's on the flat part, north of the Arbuckles.
North of the Arbuckles. Okay. How far from I-35 is it from the highway?
Let's see. It couldn't be very far because from Davis out there it was only about 5 miles. And that I-35 turnoff is maybe a mile from Davis now.
So what's about 4 miles from the interstate then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting place.
Ever go to Turner Falls?
Mm-hmm.
When's the first time you went there?
Oh, I don't, see. I don't remember the first time I went there, but I know the road was terrible, and when we got to close to the falls, it was just awful. You couldn't go to the falls. You'd have to get out and walk a certain part of the way. You just couldn't get up to the falls.
You go swimming there?
Huh?
You go swimming there at the falls?
Oh, I didn't.
Oh, yes, you had a swimsuit, you remember, and it had...
Yeah, that was for wading. I couldn't...
It had long drawers is what I would call it, don't you remember?
Yeah, I remember. I remember the suit.
Sleeves.
And there's those bloomers and then a skirt over it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you remember there were some pictures of you and Papa's sisters and her children.
Yeah.
And the falls, and I could see you sitting there in that suit. Whether you ever got it wet, I don't know.
Well, I know that when we went to cross over on the other side, below Turner Falls, that Jim picked up Mama in one arm and me in the other and took us across the water.
That's your husband.
When'd you meet your husband?
Oh, gee. When I first went there.
Mm-hmm.
And he said when he first saw my mother and me pass over the other side of the street, he said, "That's the girl I want to marry." He never had met me yet. And when I got to my sister-in-law's house, I said, "Who was that big band standing in that door over there?" And she said, "That was Jim Draughon." And I said, "Goodness, he's an ugly old fella, isn't he?" And she said, "Well, no, he's handsome." And I said, "Well, he looked awful big, looked like a giant to me." But I did marry him.
When'd you get married?
1898, wasn't it, married?
Uh-huh.
1898.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the battleship Maine?
Mm.
The battleship Maine?
I heard of it, yeah.
Spanish-American War he's talking about.
The battleship Maine was blown up in Havana Harbor in 1898.
Is that so?
Yeah. Was there any reaction in Davis when that happened?
If there was, I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm. Any of the boys from Davis go to the war? Spanish-American War?
I think so. But I don't know who they were.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one boy shot himself through the hand so he wouldn't have to go to the war.
Who was that?
I don't remember his name.
Did you throw a big party at the turn of the century? 1900?
I don't remember that either.
New Year's Eve?
Don't remember anything about that.
What about Statehood Day? November 16th, 1907.
You know, I don't remember that either.
You don't?
Mm-mm. I guess I was too busy with my family by that time.
How many kids you have?
4.
4.
Mm-hmm. 3 girls and a boy.
Now, are you the youngest, oldest?
My boy was the oldest, but he died in 1912.
I'm the next. Now, when you get through with yours, there are some things that I think might be of interest on this Living Legends.
Okay.
Mother, going back to Fort Worth, you mentioned that there were gas lights on the corners and they were lit by a lamplighter.
Yep.
I think that's interesting.
There's a song about that somewhere.
Yeah.
The old lamplighter.
And then you use lamps for the house.
Yeah.
In Davis or Fort Worth?
Fort Worth.
What about in Davis?
No, I think we had lights there, didn't we, Marion?
Well, of course, I wasn't born till 1903, so we had electric lights when I was born. But everybody also used backup lamps.
But, you know, the lights hung down from the ceiling in the middle of the room. Hung down on a cord.
Mm-hmm. Now, you were born in 1903.
Now, then, for heat, in Fort Worth, you used fireplace.
Yeah.
And then a stove later on. And I think this is interesting because this was also in Davis, that you didn't have clothes closets. So what did you do with your clothes if you didn't have clothes closets?
No, I've often wondered what in the world. I just don't remember now.
Didn't you say that each one of you had a trunk that you kept your things in?
I kept most of the things in
now,
that.
I can remember a corner being curtained off for a clothes closet, and then there were nails back there, and you hung clothes on the nails.
They had armoires too, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
But,
you know, at that time, they didn't build closets in houses.
No. Now, Mother, your new house that Papa built for you when you married didn't have a closet, a clothes closet in it, did it?
no. Mm-mm. It had back of the kitchen was a room, and I kept a trunk and boxes and things in there.
And then since you were a piano teacher all of your life, you know, I was asking you yesterday about what instruments you had besides a piano, and you mentioned 2 guitars and a mandolin.
That was in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
My brother played the mandolin.
Played for dances.
And a boy by the name of Bowd Mosley played the guitar.
And is that where you learned to chord like you would play on the guitar? You learned to chord on the piano.
Yeah. And I hadn't learned to play bass and treble together. I was too little. And I'd just play the treble, and then they would pick it up by ear.
See, she would read the music, and then the boys would pick up the melody by her playing it on the piano. And I thought the food prices would be interesting, too.
And Mom would send me up to the corner to the meat market to get a dime's worth of steak for 4 of us.
I love that.
Isn't that great? And then
he'd throw in a dog bone and a string of weenies.
A long string of wieners free.
Oh, wow.
I thought that was interesting.
Oh, it is.
For a dime.
Well, and then also, and this was in my father's store too, that when you'd pay your bill, the merchant would either give you some candy or, in my father's instance, in a hardware store, he'd always give a sack of nails when they paid up their bill.
And my brothers would give snuff or tobacco.
Now, that is interesting.
I thought that was interesting.
And that is.
And you know, this, when I was in South America living with the Murray colony, this was something, it was like my going back 100 years, because here was the same thing happening down there.
You were in the Murray colony?
Yeah. And when the Indians would come to pay up their bill, they'd ask for a yampa. And we didn't know what, they said, yappa me, and we didn't know what it was at first, because that was not a Spanish word. That was Indian. They meant give me a little gift. So they'd get the same thing. They'd get a little tobacco or some snuff or a little bit of candy in a little sack.
I want to talk to you about that Murray colony, too.
I'll tell you some tricks my brothers played on my inhabitants.
Oh, this is terrible sin, but go ahead and tell it.
I still think it's funny. But anyway, they would get tea in the big boxes and big square cardboard boxes. And they'd divide that tea and put one half of it in another box. And the one in this box over here would sell for, say, 25 or 30 cents. And this one would sell for 15. There's all the same. And then
what about the coal oil?
And the coal oil, or the kerosene, they'd divide that also. And they'd put a red coloring in one. And the other was white. And the red coloring sold for twice as much as the white.
Now, was this in South America?
No, this was
This is in the store.
This was in my brother's store. My own brothers, half brothers.
Oh, my.
Oh.
Nobody ever told on me. Nobody ever knew anything about it.
Oh, for goodness sake.
What were some of the wedding gifts you received?
Let's see. I received 2 great big cane chairs. And, let's see, what else? A silver coffee pot. Coffee. Can't remember anything else. Oh, my brothers gave me let's see, what did they call that? I guess call it sideboard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, little gifts. I don't remember all the little gifts.
After you were married, what kind of house did you live in?
Oh, my husband started, he's afraid I wouldn't, he's afraid I'd go back on him, I guess. But he started the house long before we married. And I can remember how it was made. It was very fancy. And they went in a little hall and then into what we called a parlor in those days on the north side. And there were sliding doors between the parlor and the parlor bedroom. And then the sliding doors between the parlor bedroom and the dining room. And from the dining room you went into the kitchen. And from the kitchen into a pantry. And then and the bedrooms were on the south side of the house. And there's one big one and one little one.
I think she's talking about the one.
Now, what was a parlor bedroom used for?
Never used it at all.
It was a guest room, I guess.
It was supposed to be a guest room.
Mm-hmm.
But
To regress just a minute, what kind of games did you play as a child?
games
Mm-hmm.
as a child, let's see. We played stealing sticks.
How do you play that?
Well, there was 2 lines, and sticks were in the middle. And if you could steal a stick before you got caught by the other side, why, then you had more sticks. And let's see, we played drop the handkerchief. You know how
Now,
that
that's in a circle, isn't it?
Yeah. And then we played musical chairs. You know what that is, too,
Yes.
don't you?
Mm-hmm.
That's about all I remember.
Oh, don't you remember the one that was so naughty that involved a kiss?
I remember that was musical chairs, wasn't it? I don't know. But I wouldn't play it, whatever it was, because I... Now, I remember the first time I went to a party and that they played that, and I said, how do you play it? And when they told me, I said, I don't want to play it.
Isn't it heavy, heavy hangs over thy head?
Yeah.
It must have been an old English game. really.
How do you play that?
I don't remember how you played that.
Well, that's the one where they...
That's the kissing
That's
one.
the kissing game.
That's the kissing one.
That's all I can remember.
Uh-huh.
Is it like spin the bottle?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It said, heavy, heavy hangs over thy head. And you would say, fine or superfine. And then the person that was back of you would say either fine or superfine. I can remember that. And if you didn't guess it right, you had to have a kiss. You got a kiss. That was the penalty. The kiss was the penalty.
I didn't want into that kissing game.
Sounds a little bit like 20 questions. Joe, could I ask one question?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm really curious
yeah,
about
go ahead.
this. Mrs. Draughon, when you were going to the private school in Fort Worth, did you by any chance take classes in elocution?
Yeah.
They taught you elocution.
Yeah.
What sort of things do you do in an elocution? Joe, could I ask one question?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm really curious
yeah,
about
go ahead.
this. Mrs. Draughon, when you were going to the private school in Fort Worth, did you by any chance take classes in elocution?
Yeah.
They taught you elocution.
Yeah.
What sort of things do you do in an elocution class?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do in an elocution class?
Well, we learned
That you did in elocution class.
I remember part of one.
Could you say it?
And I see. He was black as the ace of spades, you see, and scarcely as high as a tall man's knee. He wore a hat that was not a sub-brim, but that, of course, mattered nothing to him. And as for stockings and shoes, dear me, nothing about such things knew he. He sat on the curbstone one day, placidly passing the hours away. His thoughts on the clouds overhead were intent, when down the street suddenly came a great crowd of horses and of men, and the lad jumped to his feet and said, "Here's a great time that I was in." And he called to his friend and said, "Hi, Caesar. What this procession of marching for, so?" And Caesar replied, "Go along, you George Washington. Ain't you got no pride? This is Washington's birthday, did you know that?" But you had to go to some big brush the brim off your hat. For a moment George Washington stood in surprise, then plainer to view grew the whites of his eyes, then swift to the front of the ranks scampered he, this bite of a kid scarce as high as your knee. The soldiers looked stern, and an officer said, as he rapped with his sword on the black woolly head, "Come, boy, clear the road, what a figure you are." And then a policeman, of course it was mean, removed young George Washington far from the scene.
And, Mother, did you have to do that with the appropriate gestures?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, and they were all very stilted. If you went away, it was like this.
Yeah,
and, you know, if
scarce as high as your knee.
Scarce as high. And everything was slow. You didn't do anything fast, because if you did, the audience wouldn't catch on. If you went away, or if you saw a ring on her finger, it was like this, you see. That was the elocution class.
Yeah.
It was with the appropriate gestures.
Yeah.
Where you see an end to it is the mummers, years ago, used to have a tent on the east side, and they would give these old melodramas with these gestures, you know. Oh, it's just hilarious, but at that time it wasn't hilarious. That's the way you acted.
Yeah. Did you ever take part in living pictures?
Oh, Mother, we didn't call those living pictures. What he's talking about is on the stage they would make a frame of flowers or something. What was it we called that? And then people would come in that frame and act out a part.
I don't remember that either.
I can remember that. But we didn't call it living pictures. We called it something else.
And they would make like
a tableau, Mother.
Tableau.
Tableau. Don't you remember the tableaus?
Yeah.
That's what we call
Now you would enact like paintings of the old masters?
Yeah, oh, no, we wouldn't do that. We'd each make up our own tableau. If we were assigned, for example, to have a tableau of Christmas, we'd do something. We'd all get in there and make a picture of Christmas. But if it was Easter, we'd do an Easter picture. This was the tableau. And each group would do that.
Did you do any work for the war effort in World War I?
Yes.
What'd you do?
I just gave I remember writing a poem and my little girl reciting it, not marrying my one younger than that. And I don't.
What about Papa? He was one of the
He went around in the country and gave speeches.
And didn't you do something for the Red Cross at that time? Didn't you women get together and show up these
I had a group that
unwearable things?
We sewed things for them.
Bandages and so on?
Yeah.
Did you knit?
No, I never did knit. I crocheted, but I didn't knit.
Miss Theda, did you do any work for the war effort?
My mother knitted.
1918, I was too young to do it.
Okay, you would have been
15.
Yeah.
I remember we made little black robes for, I don't know what they were for.
And then you made bandages.
Made
I
bandages.
remember you saying you made bandages.
Yeah.
Do you remember the poem you wrote for your daughter?
Mm-mm.
The what?
The poem she wrote for her daughter?
No. I may have it somewhere, but I don't know where.
Any questions?
I've got a bunch of them.
Okay, let's see.
Going back to when you got water in the house, but first when you went to Davis, you got water from a well and you primed the pump. You remember that? You told me last night.
Yeah, Mama.
You got water from a well.
Mama did it, yeah.
And later there was water from a faucet, which ran out. Now you had a faucet on the back porch, but the water didn't run out and into a water main. It ran out on the surface of the backyard. You remember? You told me last night.
Yeah.
How do you prime a pump?
Well, you just put a little water on the pump to prime it so it'll pump up and down.
What does that do?
I don't know what it did, but evidently did something.
Did you ever make soap?
No.
We had Mother, you tell him about the new majestic range that you had that had a hot water tank on the side. See, we didn't have hot water tanks. We had to heat everything on the stove.
It's a great big range, and then there was a hot water tank on the side, about this way, and that held enough water.
And then it heated from the coal or wood. And then what about your summer stove?
Kerosene, coal oil stove.
A summer stove? What's a summer stove used for? I mean, what's the purpose of a summer stove?
Well, because that stove, that range was so hot, it heated up the whole house.
Oh, okay.
And we had a little room at the back of the kitchen that we kept a kerosene stove.
So it's a cook stove?
You cooked on top only, no oven.
And then what about your clothes washing?
Well, the clothes washing was in the backyard, of course, and I had a long bench, and the tubs were on the bench, and boiled the clothes in a great big black pot out.
You put wood under the pot and heated the water and then boiled the clothes, but you never did do that.
Oh, no, I never did do that.
Someone who came in.
Always
then
had
they'd take
to
a stick and
punch the clothes down.
They use a scrub board?
And use the scrub board in the tubs, yes. But I never did wash clothes.
And what about the irons? How did you iron all those ruffles and things?
Well, let's see, we had a woman to come to do the ironing too, and she just ironed them with an old iron that you had to use a cloth to hold the handle.
Put them on the stove.
Yeah, sad iron.
Sad iron.
And then later they had a wooden handle that fitted in the iron.
And this great invention of the wooden handle, after a while it would wobble. It would wobble, and you'd try to iron, and here was this wobble coming. And some of the people who came to iron would go back to the other type because it didn't wobble that way.
I remember we had one black woman that would sing all the time she was ironing. She'd say, "This child has too many clothes. This child has too many clothes."
Make up the words.
Make up the words as she
Like
went.
East Indian. And then you had an ice box.
Yeah. We had a refrigerator in the dining room, and we had to keep a pan under that and empty it so often or it'd run over. And then we had a great big ice box on the back porch.
And it was a real ice box.
Yeah.
That used the
Real
block of ice.
Yeah. An oak ice box.
Mm-hmm.
The ice bed would come around and put ice in that box. And we kept watermelons and things like that in there.
How did you heat the house at Davis?
Let's see, Dave, how did we heat the house? I remember in our bedroom we had a Franklin stove. It was real old. And
in one of the rooms there was the most enormous stove with a lot of fancy trimming on it.
Stoves. That was the only way to heat it was stoves.
And that one was heated with coal, but sometimes we'd get coal that had too much powdery stuff in it. And it would sob around in there, and all at once it would explode.
Yeah.
And all this black stuff would come out of the stove. But then there was a hall with steps, and in the winter that wasn't heated, was it? The hall with the steps that went upstairs?
No.
That was not heated. You had to just run from one room to the other.
I have one more question that I'm very curious about.
What's that?
When you were a little girl, did your mother have any favorite home remedies that she used on you, say when you had a stomach ache or something like that?
Let's see. I know we had what they call antiphlogistin that you put on the chest for colds. And we had
You put
Paragon.
stuff up into a paste, and then you put it on there, and it stays until you peel it off.
What was it made of?
I don't have any.
Antiphlogistin. And it smelled bad, too.
Did you ever have to wear asafoetida bags?
She didn't.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Wear asafoetida bags.
Yes, I wore them, and
Those things work. You know why they work?
Everybody wore.
No, I never have, but my grandmother has. But I've been very curious about those things.
yeah.
Well, Mother, I think an interesting thing that works really when you have when you're sick at the stomach, which you had these migraine headaches, that the grandmother would put mustard plaster right on your stomach.
Yeah.
And it would stop her vomiting. But if you didn't take it off in time, you'd have a blister clear across.
I remember going to sleep all the time, and Mama forgot to take it off, and I had my whole stomach blistered.
And then another thing, she'd get you up on the edge of the bed and put your feet in hot mustard
water.
water.
And we had Paragaric too then.
I've heard of Paragoric.
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't know what it is.
Oh, that's a Paragoric. You can't get it without a prescription now because, it's what you call it. And that was for a stomach ache.
Mm-hmm. For years, people depended on Paregoric.
Yes.
For babies who had the colic and all, but you can't get it now.
We put 1 drop of Paregoric in a spoonful of milk and give it to the babies.
Did you? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I thought it was interesting your view of Davis the first time you came when you were 10 years old. That there were only 2 stores and they were by the railroad, and the depot was in a boxcar.
Yeah.
But then from your brother's house looking east toward Sulphur, there was just a crooked road. It wasn't called Main Street. And you could look across the cotton fields to the Chigley house.
Yeah.
To the big Indian house and the Chigley Grove, which is now Davis City Park, where you gave the operettas in order to get money to start the park.
Yeah, and the bad boys of the town tore it all up.
And then when you would go to Paul's Valley to a dance, what kind of roads were there between Davis and Paul's Valley?
Well, there's stumps all the way.
There's stumps in the road. And there were places where there was a big hill where everybody'd have to get out of the buggy and push.
Well, when we went to Turner Falls, you know, I remember one time we went to Turner Falls and as 4 are married, and they'd built a bridge across a creek there, Turner Creek, homemade bridge. And we went across it, and just as we got across that creek, the bridge fell in behind us.
Oh. But going to Paul's Valley, it was just a road full of stumps.
Yeah, going to Wynnewood, this road full of stumps.
And now, was it Wynnewood or Paul's Valley where there were dances in the old hotel that's still there?
Yeah. And going to Wynnewood, the road was just full of stumps.
Who was Davis named for?
Sam Davis.
Who was he?
Well, he was just a man. And
did you know him?
Yes, everybody knew him, of course. They lived there.
What kind of man was he?
He was a very fine man. And Davis was, I understand, was not built right where it is now, but was built a little further on north of that, and then moved to the place where it is now.
And Sam Davis had a store in the original one that was up a little north of where Davis is now.
How come they moved to town?
I don't know, but
closer to the railroad.
A lot of towns have been moved, you know. But Sam Davis had a store. He kept flour and stuff like that in. And later on, what kind of store did he have?
I just thought it was general merchandise.
I don't remember. I remember Will, I don't remember his name now.
Short. Was it Short? More.
No. They had a dry goods store. I've forgotten the name of it.
What about when you first went to Sulphur?
Well, there wasn't anything there but a hotel.
And the hotel was where?
Right by, there were 7 Sulphur Springs there then, and the hotel was close to it. And I remember the first time I went out there to a dance, I went with my husband, which to be, I wasn't married, but I saw some black things on the steps. I said, "What are those?" And he said, "Tarantulas." I said, hell in the days. I don't want to get out here. And he said, oh, they won't hurt you. So he took me out of the buggy, and the tarantula ran off.
Well, this is the same. The boys used to get out of the buggies first and thrash around and kill the tarantulas before the girls would get out. And this same thing happened in eastern Oklahoma around the Illinois River when they would go picnicking. Because I know an Indian, Buster Grass, who's a public accountant here, he said they'd always get out first and thrash around and kill the snakes before the girls got out.
Do you ever take the baths there at Sulphur?
Mm.
You ever drink the water?
Mm-hmm.
Was it good for you?
Horrible. And it had a bromide spring close to it, and that was worse. Ugh.
What was it when we used to get it in 5-gallon jar, in a 5-gallon jar, and Papa used to put it on his shoulder, and what was it the man said as he saw him? Didn't he say, that's the biggest man and the biggest bottle I ever saw?
I don't remember what that was. I guess it was a sulfur water.
Is that water supposed to be good for you?
Mm-hmm. Supposed to be.
Who was Wynnewood named for?
I don't know that.
Well, it's Wynn. Was there anyone named Wynn around there?
I don't know.
Wynwood,
No, I don't know. I don't know who his name for. Never heard anybody say.
Of course, you know who Paul's Valley was named
Yeah.
for. It was the Paul family.
Uh-huh.
What about Ardmore?
No, I don't know who that. I don't think it was named for anybody. I don't know how it come to have its name.
Well, it was named for Ardmore, Pennsylvania. It was on a railroad in Pennsylvania, so when they came down here, they named it Ardmore.
Mm-hmm.
But
What about the Indians? You know any Choctaws or Chickasaws?
Yeah, my best friend was a Chickasaw.
What was the name?
Wait a minute, let's think.
was that the one you call Shug?
Her name was Alice, but we called her Shug.
Kemp.
Kemp, K-E-M-P, Kemp.
Mm-hmm.
They lived out from Davis.
And her grandmother's name, what was her grandmother's name?
I don't know, honey.
Did you know Frank Murray?
Frank Murray.
I don't think we knew any Murrays in Davis, did we?
I never heard
Lived
of
up
him.
by Lindsay, Aaron Springs.
No, I don't know.
That was unknown territory. Our life was Davis, Sulphur, Wynnewood. Paul's Valley was way off. And Hennepin, which was over by Fort Arbuckle. Mm-hmm. And that's about as far as we went in Price's Falls. Just a little. And the farmers spent their lives in that little territory.
I knew Bill Murray.
What was he like?
Ask Marion.
He's not interviewing me.
I'm going to interview you here in a minute about going to South America.
Well, she married his son. Marion married his son.
Mother thought really Bill Murray was about the most uncouth individual she'd ever seen.
I can't tell you about him.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know. I don't know about him. I know he had sons, Johnston and Messina, and what's the one living in
Burbank.
And
Billy.
And Billy.
And Jean.
Mm-hmm.
And Marion married Johnston.
But what insulted Mother was that, you see, she had grown up and she was the apple of everybody's eye. She was the petted one girl in the family. And then along came this man who couldn't care less for any pets. And he had a big, loud voice, and that just really, Mother didn't like that at all.
Well, he came to our house Jim brought him home for dinner one time, and he said, I said, what do you want to drink, Mr. Murray? He said, tea. And so I fixed some tea and gave him it. Too strong. And I brought him some water and put it in. He said, No good. He was absolutely, he said just what he wanted to say, and it didn't make any difference who he hurt.
Mother was really insulted. She'd never been around anyone like that.
I never did ask him anymore.
Where were you living during the Depression?
Hmm?
Where were you living during the Depression of 1930, 31?
Weren't we living in Alton?
Well, at the first of it, and then you moved to Oklahoma City with the girls, with your two younger daughters.
How bad did the Depression affect you?
I don't remember anything about it.
We were never so happy.
I don't
We
remember.
had the happiest time.
Yeah.
We didn't have very much money. And Mother, I gave her the money. She managed it. And we just had everything we needed.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something called time payments. And that's the way we got our clothes. And we just had a real happy time.
Yeah, I didn't feel the Depression at all.
What about the Depression of 1907, 1908?
I don't remember going through any kind of depression.
Well, she was just in her own musical world
Yeah.
because by that time she was teaching music.
Yeah.
And writing poetry. And writing operettas.
Do you have any poetry that you've written?
Oh, yes.
She still writes it. She has a whole book full. And
I remember one thing during the Depression, but I didn't suffer from it. But this friend of mine, whose little daughters I taught, brought me in a lot of canned meat, which I couldn't eat at all. But I didn't tell her. I fed it to the dog. And she took me down in her cellar one time, and it was just full of everything you could think of to can. She canned everything.
Oh, my goodness.
there was not, during, if you look in that little book of poems, during the Depression, there was not a depressing poem in
No,
there.
I never felt any depression.
We didn't have much money, but we were very happy.
You don't need money to make you happy.
There has to be a certain amount. You have to have a roof over your head and three
Yeah, a
meals.
roof over your head and something to eat.
Well, so you don't worry about, not getting your bills paid, but you don't have to have
We
a lot of money to be
we always
happy,
paid. We always had enough money. She managed the money, and I did the work.
She must have been an excellent manager.
She was, and I was an excellent worker.
That is a lovely picture.
That's Mother at the age of 16.
Absolutely beautiful. Do you see this picture,
I
Joe?
see that.
So you see, all of Oklahoma's pioneers didn't live in tents. They had nice houses, and particularly in the Chickasaw Nation, where we all grew up. Nobody had a dugout. There were dugouts. Now, her half-brother lived in a dugout in, was it near Dexter, Texas, where he lived in a dugout, or was it in western Oklahoma, where one of your half-brothers lived?
I don't remember just exactly where that was, honey. You mean Allie and Morris?
Yes, they're the only one in the family that lived in a dugout.
It was half dugout, what they called a half dugout.
This Frank Murray I mentioned built the big Aaron Springs mansion. And
Now, you see, here's during the Depression, 1937, and here's 1935, and here's 1935, 1934. See? Dreams. I am as I am, as my dreams have made me. I'm not to blame for what I am, for what my dreams have made me. So different from what I used to be. I am as my dreams have made me. Well, you see, we were not destitute. We didn't have any money left over. We lived from one payday to the next. But none of the horrors touched us.
yeah,
We always had a positive attitude. Wouldn't you call it that? A positive attitude toward life. we always knew that that we were one of the lilies of the field and that we would be taken care of, didn't we?
Yeah. I still know if I was thrown out in the world that God would take care of me. I'm not worried about anything. Mm-hmm. Worry is silly.
Did you do any work for the war effort in World War II?
Oh, ha, Mother. That's the only job you ever had outside of music. You worked at Douglas. Wasn't it called Douglas? It was Tinkerfield later on, but
Tinkerfield,
at first it was Douglas.
Yes, I did. I did sign up for that because I felt it was my duty to do it.
What'd you do out there?
Well, they first put me in the, what did they call it?
Tool crib.
Well, I was in, before they got ready to put me in the tool crib, they gave us all...
Was it filing?
Filing on little pieces of aluminum. And then they put me in the tool crib and I distributed the tools to the people who did the work.
Now, did you know what the tools were by name when they'd come and ask you?
Let's see. I did then, let's see.
They'd come and ask you, and at first you'd have to say, well, what's that? They'd have to point.
Yeah. I remember we kept some of the tools in gasoline tank and in a gasoline thing. What was that now? I can't think of the name of them.
It was some tool that had to be kept in gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
Well.
Some kind of thing. There's a pistol. I don't know what it was, but they used it to. Somebody had to be behind it in something, and what did they use that? Thing was a pistol. I don't know what it was, but they used it to. Somebody had to be behind it in something, and what did they use that for?
Honey, I don't know. I wasn't out there.
You have any questions?
To put nails in something. I don't know what it was. I can't remember. It's been too long ago.
Oh, a pistol put nails in something. It was a riveting machine.
Riveter. That's it.
It was a riveter.
Riveter.
I was just going to ask you if there were any ladies out there that used riveters or did sheet metal work.
Yes.
At Douglas.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I had to. I would make them a sign for their tools, you know. And rivet gun. That's what I was trying to say.
Rivet gun.
Rivet gun. And then there was another thing that behind that rivet gun, and
then go downtown to a certain place, and then did you walk over to get your ride on Reno or somewhere?
No, it was no. We stood on a platform and waited for it.
And a automobile came by.
For a bus to come by.
No, but I mean after you got, you see, you went downtown on.
Oh, we walked from where they let us off.
Yeah, you walked, and then an automobile picked you up and took you out there.
Yeah.
And then when you parked, you had quite a way to walk.
Mm-hmm.
That was a Tinker.
Yeah, before it was named Tinker, it was Douglas, I think. Douglas Air. And was Midwest City starting up at that time?
You know, I don't remember where it was now.
Of course, you just went along the road and got out at the plant.
Yeah. I guess there were some people there. I remember that they had some people move from around there where the airplanes went over. Thought it was dangerous. Some of them didn't move, though.
Did you go to school in Davis?
Mm-mm.
So your last school was a private school?
Yeah.
But then later on, Mother, when I was about 3, you went to Colorado Springs for more education.
Oh, yes.
Colorado College.
Yeah, I went to Colorado College there.
Twice. And then she went to OU.
Mm-hmm.
You say that you wrote operettas?
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't been published?
Oh, no.
You still have them here?
I don't know whether I have them or not. I wrote one about my little girl and called it Bluebell.
Bluebell?
Because my neighbor, I always dressed the little big girl in blue checks, little tiny blue checked aprons, and she started calling her Bluebell. So I wrote an operetta about Bluebell. I used a little neighbor boy and some of the half-grown up teenagers around town. I may have that around somewhere. I never thought of publishing anything. Marion had this poems published. I didn't have it published.
Are you still writing poetry?
No. Oh, I think of it sometimes. I don't write anymore.
Yeah. Do you have any of the operettas that your mother has written?
Yes, we do. She has 3 or 4 big books of her life. And I think in one of those books there's one of the operettas. Now, also after the war, she had an entire new career. As you can see, this one was done in 1965, and she's still writing poetry. And then she has written several songs that have been copyrighted, and one piano piece that was copyrighted, Easter Overture or something like that. And then she was always a big club woman, starting music clubs and literary clubs, both of those in Davis. And then when she moved to Norman, she started the Junior MacDowell Club, and she was a president one term of the Norman Music Club. And then when she came to Oklahoma City, she got in with the Shakespeare Club, and she was president there. And she was with the Shakespeare Club many years, until she got where she couldn't see anything or hear.
Yeah. Have any of the operettas been published?
No, we never did get a copyright on either one of them. One of them was, I think, named Bluebell, and the other one was the Gypsy. And I believe in your books that we must have put them in those books, don't you think?
I'm not going to tell you where they are.
Well, then, in other words, you know where they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have any questions?
No, I'm questioned out.
Want to tell me some more about your childhood?
Hmm?
You want to tell me some more about your childhood or your parents?
What do you want to know?
Oh, how did you move to Oklahoma? How did you come? By train?
Yeah.
Her father left. He moved his family to Fort Worth for the education. And then he left and he came up to the Indian country to Whitebead, which is just 3 miles, maybe 1 mile by now off of I-35 close to Pauls Valley. But it was on the road from Fort Arbuckle to Fort Sill or something like that. And he had a store there. But my grandmother didn't want to come up because she was afraid of the Indians. And so they stayed down there. In the meanwhile, before she could come up, he died of pneumonia in 1890. And he's buried in the Whitebead Cemetery.
No, he died very suddenly of food poisoning.
Oh, was it food poisoning?
Yeah.
Where is Whitebead?
It's as you go along by Pauls Valley on I-35, there will be something that says Whitebead, and it will point that way, and it's only about, I would say, 2 or 3 miles off the highway now, west of Pauls Valley.
Well, was it a town or?
Yes, it was a town. It had 2 schools. One was a boarding school, and it had a number of buildings of various things, general merchandise and so on and so forth. It was quite a community. You can find a lot about it in the archives. If you look in Arella Looney's index of the pioneer history, you'll find a lot about Whitebead.
Yeah.
It was originally an Indian place. There were Whitebead Indians wore white beads that had places there.
Well, more questions, comments? Mrs. Draughon, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
But she isn't through with her life. She's still in there writing poetry.
Good.